Welcome back, guys. Today I'm going to show you some mobilization techniques and some stretches for the muscles in the hip joint that could be referring pain into the lower back, into the hip, or even to the knee, or even the ankle. These mobilization techniques are going to help you with your sports, for example, Olympic weightlifting, powerlifting, dancing, or even daily tasks that can cause you pain in the hip joint, for example, sitting and driving for long periods. This can cause a lot of impingement syndromes that can refer pain into the back, into the hip, or even to the knee. Try out these techniques out. They're definitely going to help you out. Active hip external rotations. Lay on your back and place the ankle from the hip you are trying to mobilize and unlock onto the other knee. Now actively open and close your hip by consciously pushing your knee out and pulling them back in. Do this nice and slowly, but push the knee outwards. This will improve your external rotation of your hip joint. Once you do a few reps on both sides and there is no pain and you feel comfortable, you can now add some pressure on the outside of your knee. Hold it there for a few breaths without contracting any muscles. By doing this is called passive mobilization, created by your hands instead of actively contracting the muscles in your hip to open your hip, as that would be called active mobilization. Seated butterflies. This is a very common inner thigh stretch and mobilization technique, commonly taught in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, dance, and other kicking sports, for example, football or soccer. Just sit down on your bum and pull your feet together as close as possible towards your body. Now flutter your knees up and down. This will dynamically stretch your adductor muscles and mobilize your hip joint. Do this for about 30 seconds, 3 to 4 times. Once you're ready and confident and there is no pain in the hip joint, just lean slightly forward and push your elbows down on your thighs and hold this position for about 20 to 30 seconds and repeat it 4 to 5 times. If you don't want to count the seconds, you can just hold it for 8 long breaths. The frog hip stretch. Go on all fours and spread your legs as much as possible. You'll feel a stretch in your inner thighs. With this technique, there should be no muscular contraction at all in your bum muscles or anywhere else. Gravity should do all the work for you and stretch your adductor muscles and mobilize your hips. The adductor muscles, once again, is your inner thigh muscles, which is connected to your groin. Rock back and forth in this position about 20 times to mobilize your hip joint and your inner thigh muscles dynamically. Do this for 3 to 4 sets. Once again, once you're ready and there's no pain in this stretch, you can now move on and accentuate this type of stretch. Just spread your legs out as much as possible while staying nice and relaxed in a static position, and now allow gravity to pull your hips towards the floor. With controlled breathing, you will accentuate the stretch. Make sure you find a point of stretch by leaning back and forth and then stay in that position of the point of stretch that you've found. Hold this position and breathe in and out nice and slow with 8 long breaths, or you can hold it for about 30 seconds. Repeat this 4 to 5 times. This type of stretch will stretch your inner thigh muscles and reduce a lot of pressure in your hips, and therefore reduce a lot of pressure in your lower back and groin that can cause a lot of pain in your hips and refer pain to other areas. The hip flexor stretch. Go into a lunge position and with the knee on the side that you want to stretch, touching the floor. Both of your knee joints should start off in a 90-degree position. To do this stretch properly, make sure your chest is up and your posture is upright. A common mistake people tend to do is they arch their back instead of keeping their back straight, and this adds a lot of pressure in their lower back instead of their hip joint. To stretch the hip, focus on thrusting your hip forward nice and slow by squeezing your glute muscles. This creates hip extension that is usually compromised by modern daily activities, for example, sitting for long periods of time, or a lot of kicking sports tend to tighten up the hip flexors. As you're pushing forward in your stretch, don't allow the front knee to go beyond your toes, as this will introduce another stretch in your calf muscles, which then complicates this stretch overall. Some people tend to have a lot of pain on the bottom of their knee, especially in this stretch. I highly recommend you find a soft mat to rest your knee on, or you can use a mat like myself. I'll put a link in the description box below on where to get them. You can accentuate this stretch as well and create a stronger stretch by grabbing the rear leg with the same hand on the same side and pull it up. This will elongate the hip flexor muscles of that leg. If you find that you're losing balance in this position, just make sure you have a chair next to you so you don't fall over, and use your other hand to help you balance. Now push your hip forward and this will create a stronger stretch. Please be careful though, as you can overstretch and hurt yourself. Just hold this stretch for about 20 to 30 seconds, or take 8 long breaths on each side and alternate each leg 4 to 5 sets. Sometimes you might feel a burning sensation in front of the hip or down the leg. This is quite normal, but if it's sharp pain or unbearable pain, just stop immediately, because you can definitely hurt yourself. If you're like me and you're struggling to grab your rear leg or keep balance, just use a sofa or a chair and rest the rear foot on it. This will allow you to keep balance and maintain a similar stretch like you're holding your rear ankle with your hand. However, this will be a lot more relaxed and controlled, and therefore you will have a much more effective stretch. Just like the previous stretch, just hold this stretch for about 20 to 30 seconds, or take 8 long breaths when you're holding the stretch, and make sure you alternate each side 4 to 5 times. Banded hip flexor stretches. Get a strong resistance band and anchor it to the pole just below your hip level. Make sure you're slightly away from the anchor point so there is some sort of tension in the band. I'll put a link in the description box below on where to get these type of bands. This will pull the hip joint forward and allow your hip to stay in hip extension passively, creating a deeper stretch in the hip joint. Just go into the same position as the previous stretch and make sure you don't lean on the front knee, as this will take the effectiveness out of the stretch. And remember, keep your posture upright and push your hips forward. This technique is much more effective as you do not have to actively and push your hips forward as much as the previous stretches. Hold this position for about 20 to 30 seconds, or take 8 long breaths, and make sure you alternate 4 to 5 times on each side. Seated twisted glute stretches. Sit down with one of your legs straight in front of you. Now bend the leg that you're trying to stretch and pull it over the other leg. The heel of the bent leg should be touching on the outside of the straight leg. Now with both hands, pull the bent knee to your opposite shoulder, as if you're trying to touch the knee to the shoulder. You should feel a stretch in your bum or your glute muscles. Hold this for about 8 long breaths or 20 to 30 seconds and alternate both sides 4 to 5 times. Seated internal hip rotations. Go into a deep squat position. Now internally rotate your hip inwards. Hold this position for about 2 to 3 seconds and alternate to the other leg. I slightly bounce in this position to add some dynamic stretching into the hip joint. Do this about 10 times on each side, have a break, and then repeat it again 2 to 3 times. As this technique is quite advanced and you find it a bit too difficult to go into a deep squat, just sit on a small stool, or like me, sit on a small lifting box. This will reduce the amount of weight that you're putting into the stretch, and some of it will be offloaded into your bum when you're sitting. Pigeon pose stretch. Place the leg you're trying to stretch in front of you so that the shin bone is horizontally flat in front of you. To make this stretch easy, I recommend starting in the easiest position for this stretch, and that is to bring the heel of your front leg as close as possible to your body. Now with your rear leg nice and straight, bring your chest up so your posture is upright. This will emphasize a stretch into your rear hip joint, but it also stretches the front hamstrings and the front glutes as well. To create more of a stretch in the front leg, all you have to do is bring the heel of the front leg slightly forward so you create a 90 degrees in the front leg's knee. Hold this for 8 long breaths or 20 to 30 seconds and alternate both sides 4 to 5 times. Once again guys, thanks for watching. Now if you're not sure if the hip pain is actually coming from the hip capsule, there's a good chance that the pain is actually coming from the lower back or from sciatic symptoms. I highly recommend you check out my lower back stretches video or my sciatica video. These 2 videos could definitely help you alleviate a lot of pain that could be coming from the lower back and referring to the hip. Remember to support my channel, hit subscribe, hit like, comment below if you have any questions, and I'll see you guys in the next one.